Good evening, my fellow heretics. I'm Ryan. Welcome to Apostate Coalition, a collaboration channel bringing you all things culty. And tonight on Pious Placebo, we will get to know a third-generation Scientologist, Liz Gale. Also joining us is our friend Cassie Marie, who herself is familiar with high-control religions. Then we're going to dish about the media circus surrounding Scientology with David Miscavige on the run, his missing wife, Shelley, and the retrial of Danny Masterson. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. Hi there, beautiful people.
Hi.
Oh, I'm really psyched about tonight. I want to dish about Scientology. I want to dish about high control religions, but I would also love if you wouldn't mind if we got to know you before we get into the deep dive. Liz Gale, would you mind telling us who you are and what brought you here?
Sure. Hi, I'm Liz. I was born and raised as a third generation Scientologist. So that means I went to Scientology schools growing up, had a very intense Scientology upbringing until my about mid 20s. And then I cut ties with that and had a big falling out with the family, whole situation. So now I am in this new phase of life where I've done a lot of deprogramming, but I'm still working on my identity. And that's one of the things that kind of brought me to TikTok, to you lovely ladies. I've looked at your content. I just loved from my beginning on TikTok. I'm a mom. I also do some preschool teaching. So a lot of what I took out of this was trying to figure out, well, that the way I was raised is probably not how it should have been gone down.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of seeking, and that's who I am. I'm
figuring out who you are, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of what it comes. That's what it comes down to after you kind of come out of these situations. Everything changes. It really, how you see everything changes. Cassie Marie, would you mind giving us a little synopsis of yourself and how you got to be here speaking out about religious indoctrination?
Yes. So I am a little bit different than you ladies. I actually grew up not in a cult. I was just kind of lukewarm Christian. I know, darn.
Shucks. Thank goodness, right?
I was just, regular old flavor of Christian. But when I was 20 years old, I moved to a different city with my then boyfriend, now husband. And we joined a church that was like a charismatic evangelical with Pentecostal roots that they just called non-denominational. And I ended up doing prophetic ministry in that church. So I was basically a Christian psychic, kind of.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I love.
I don't talk about that as much. And we can get into why later. I'm going to,
okay.
But then there was a pipeline of culty Christian to spiritual business coaching world. I really wanted to be a spiritual business coach and ended up getting into a relationship with a narcissistic, extremely manipulative, also Christian psychic business coach. And after I had my daughter in 2017, I saw Scientology in the Aftermath on TV and started making connections between cults and my faith and the business coaching world that I was in, weirdly. Yeah. And my husband actually started deconstructing. He grew up in a culty religion. So he started deconstructing his faith. We didn't make any cult connections at the time. And as he deconstructed and I started deconstructing and started trying to cut ties with this business coach, it kind of shit hit the fan. And I realized like all these connections between so many different things that had this similar culty thread through them, and had my whole identity crisis. And my kind of way that I've been trying to figure out what's next and how to like go on from that has been telling stories. So I'm really wanting to use art and storytelling as a form of healing and talk about how important that's been in my life, but also just kind of make people aware of what undue influence looks like and what it looks like to be in a high control group. Because yeah, I was in a non-denominational church that was kind of a cult.
But like you said, which again is the reason we do shows like this, is to show that pipeline that you were saying. There's kind of like that pipeline into, I'm guessing it's kind of like MLM-ish. So not, you know what I mean? Just where there's the layers, I guess I should say. There's layers to everything. There's always somebody at the top who's very well protected. And then the rest of us schlubs just trying to get through life, end up having almost a crisis at some point when we're like, oh my gosh, I was being fed a lot of bull crap. Yeah. Well, thank you both for that brief synopsis. That way our audience can get to know you a little bit. And now I'm going to shift over to Liz, if you wouldn't mind. So Liz, you said at the opening that you were about 20 years deep in, you were born in, right? Into Scientology. Can you hear me, Liz? It looks like internet might be cutting out a little bit. It could catch up. I'm going to pause because it might catch up. Now it looks like you might have caught up, Liz.
Am I here?
I think you could be here. I think you might be here now.
Okay.
You've appeared.
I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry at all. Stuff happens. The Holy Ghost will keep you here. Don't worry.
Thank you. So yeah, actually, my mom was raised her whole life in Scientology. So my quote Scientology experience began when I was in my mother's womb. She did the silent birth with me, and processes on children about their past lives. All that starting from so my entire existence.
Would you mind telling me what a silent birth is? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh yeah. So L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, he deemed himself an expert in many, many fields, one of which was the suggestion that women, in order to protect their children's subconscious, need to be silent during childbirth, that any sounds or words that happen, not just the woman, but everybody in the room, everything, it's a pretty big expectation. It kind of, that's a lot of pressure.
I mean, metaphorically, physically, spiritually.
And also pushing that natural birth. So like, you know, I mean, I've had a couple of kids and I could not be silent.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that is a wild expectation to set upon somebody when you yourself have never, will never, can never experience labor. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. So coming in, I already was coming in on a wave of high Scientology expectation.
Right.
The other thing is that I had an older brother who was very smart. He was, it sounds quintessential cliche to say he was a genius, but later on he was accepted to MIT at 15. He was part of some of the early internet stuff.
Okay.
And so I had to live up, he was touted as like, look how great Scientology can be. If you raise a kid from birth, they can be like this kid. And so I also came in after that. So I'd say it's a high expectation, high pressure environment. But there's a lot of processes done for small children to like assimilate them to their new life, like if that after reincarnation. So even before you're reading, you already have a lot of Scientology showing you how the world works. So that was my whole world. And then also going to
early
Scientology
indoctrination.
Very early indoctrination.
Okay,
And
so
in
you
the
were like full
schools,
time in it.
full time, and in the schools, we practiced Scientology. So if anybody got hurt on the playground, we were all expected to freeze, be quiet, because again, that's one of the bases in Scientology. Um, you just have to be quiet a lot. And so
Okay.
it's funny that those rules were on the playground. Those rules were in recess. Those rules everywhere, every single place that you are. Um, and so now I've grown up more. I've gone to college. So, I've taken some sociology, psychology classes, and I recognize it for what it is. But I didn't even know that I was in it when I was a kid.
Yeah, it seems so normal when that's all you're surrounded with. So it's
Right.
very intrusive. That is
Very intrusive.
very, yeah. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses also don't separate any parts of their religion, like start to finish, the murder, anything good, anything bad. The kids know, like from infancy. So I guess in that way, they're very similar. They don't shy away from just telling kids, I guess, what they believe. So silence is really important. Is that a pattern?
It is a
Silencing
pattern.
people.
Well, yeah, I know, in more ways than one. Scientology comes
Mhm.
from Dianetics. And in Dianetics, one of the fundamental beliefs is that in a time of pain or unconsciousness, a person will record all the sounds and will take them literally. And so he says, like, if you, as a mother, you can say the wrong thing and your child will end up in the loony bin. Like this is a very high pressure, like you can ruin their entire psyche by saying one statement at the wrong time. And so
Oh my goodness.
that was part of the story. One of the big parts of my story that I had timidly shared and then ended up sharing with the whole world on TV was my brother broke his arm when he was 4. And my mom said when he came out of the operating room, he was a different child. And so in Scientology, what had happened is he had heard the nurses, somebody had said something during that time, and now it was locked in his subconscious working against him. And
Hmm.
she said that she went to her church, she went to Scientology, and she eventually realized it was her. She was the one triggering him because she said something in that wrong moment. And that's why he went to boarding school at 8 years old, to protect him from what she said at that wrong time because of what L. Ron Hubbard told her and her what was right. So yeah, I mean, just like
Wow.
so very sad to me. And so that was a huge part of why I went on and I have my bachelor's in child and family studies, is because I'm like, that can't be right.
Healthy.
So now I know a lot more.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't. How concerning, how sad that a mom would feel pressured to separate herself from her child because she feels incapable of
Mhm.
living up to this standard of not saying, whatever not being negative, I guess is how it is. You can't express negativity.
Yes, and there's no sense of age appropriateness. Age appropriate
Mm.
expectations for like emotional, social development, those don't really exist. You're expected to behave like a grown up when you're a child, and if you don't, that's not optimum and you need basically more to be fixed. And so to see that
Wow.
as my brother ended up unaliving himself at 19. So I've constantly spent a part of my life trying to unravel his story, and that sticks out as being a really important part.
Yeah,
So
I imagine that was probably very, I don't know. I'm sure that affected him in many ways. Is this kind of what woke you up? Is that what was shaking your faith? Do you call it faith? What is it? Is there a term?
belief, I
Okay,
think. I
sorry.
mean,
I'm like, wait
they
a
don't
minute.
really use the word belief, but yeah. Um, so that happened when I was 19. I found out about that, what had happened with my brother's broken arm. He had already been passed for about 5 years at that point.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
but no, I did not walk away then. At 19, when I had problems in my life, mental health issues, breakups, didn't know what to do with myself, I kept going back to Scientology. And so while I wasn't
Yes.
like and the further away I got, the longer of stretches I would be away from it. But then I would get desperate and I didn't know any other tools. I thought that I had done something wrong. And I just went back to what I knew.
I have to say, like, the whole onus on ourselves. I don't know about you. I'm guessing, but Cassie, you probably did the same exact thing because I know I did the same exact thing. I don't know about y'all in the audience, but I know when I had left at times, I always was just like, oh, it's just probably like I can't live up to the standards. I can't do it. Nothing's wrong with the religion. It's something wrong with me. It
Oh yeah.
sucks.
This
When really
sucks.
the religion's
Yeah.
just terrible. It's put How many children did Mr. Hubbard have?
Gosh, I think he had 4. I want to say he had 4 children.
And are his children like okay? I'm
No.
sorry, but I gotta wonder, like.
No. One of his sons, his youngest son, okay, I might get the dates wrong and all this, but Quentin was known to have committed suicide because he may have been somewhere in the LGBTQ. I don't know exactly, but it was not allowed. I don't know what he was feeling or exploring, but whatever it was pushed him to decide to unalive himself.
And
so
that's
that's
important.
no
I
good.
didn't realize that. They don't accept anybody being gay. I hadn't realized that until Leah Remini show. I just assumed they were, if it's celebrities, it's, kind of cool. But obviously not.
Honestly, that's one of the saddest things, because if you went into a church of Scientology, they would say, oh, we're fine with it. We're fine with it. One of my major cracks that happened with me is I was working at Portland. I was working at the church there, and upstairs someone was visiting. A big shot was visiting, a big Scientology big shot. He came and he was bragging upstairs and like telling stories, and everybody was sitting around, and he said, I cured a gay man with Dianetics. And I was like looking around at everybody, because I was going to Portland State University at that time, like very liberal school. I did not feel that same way. And I was shocked at what he said. And everybody was like, yeah, man, yeah, man. So there's a huge amount of cognitive dissonance and coercion that's happening when you will hear Scientology say that they are okay with accepting everybody. But once you get to a certain level, the expectation is that you're going to improve to meet their standards. So that really bothers me, actually, because like most people in all groups and everywhere in the world, there are people, unfortunately, who are in situations where they're not accepted. And it really pisses me off to hear the church saying, we accept you, we accept you. And I know that that's not true and is going to lead to heartbreak. And that makes me mad.
That's a good question. Are you allowed to grieve? Or is that, because I know, like, as Jehovah's Witnesses, like, people grieve, but at the same time, it's almost like, well, you're going to see them again because we have a promise of everlasting life. So you don't really need to be that sad because you're going to see them again. How do they handle it in Scientology?
Very similar to that, except for a huge part of Scientology is the tone scale, which is a quantitative chart of emotions, that each emotion has a number. And at a certain point, you have the divider of survival, non-survival, and grief is non-survival. So it is an emotion to be fixed, to be like it's not viewed,
not stable.
Yeah, you're not really expected to grieve. You can have grief for like a minute, like you're saying. And then you need to just realize what we're telling you and sort of get over it. And it's a problem if you grieve for too long or unexpectedly or any of those things.
That's unimaginative, to lose a family member, wife, part, whatever, and to be kind of at some point looked at like, just get over it. Just get over it. Wow.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, that's terrible. I hate hearing that kind of stuff when they stifle, because I'm sorry, that's just one of my things. I hate being stifled emotionally because I was so stifled. Like now as an adult, I'm
Right.
I'm struggling with trying to figure out these emotions and how to express them. Yeah, it is not good for your mind at all. Um, yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
more I can say about that. Um, is there anything else I wanted to ask you? So what is it that made you like decide to speak out? Because that's a really big step. I was talking backstage to Cassie about, there can be a lot of repercussions. I sometimes don't think people realize that you can get a lot of flack, especially in Scientology, which is something we'll get into later, but how they can harass people and try to shut people down. What made you decide, like, I don't care? Here I am.
Yeah. That's a good question. Honor. Honor is
Mm,
the only thing I can say. Um, I lived for maybe 8 years ish, sort of what they call under the radar. So I knew I didn't really want to do Scientology, but I would never say anything negative about it. Um, I would just kind of toe that line of like, oh, you do what you want. Watching my mother and my stepfather have no retirement money set aside, going into credit card debt, purchasing more Scientology materials, um, and knowing in those relationships, like, you don't say anything because so that's like under the radar, just playing it cool. Um, but I have kids. I have a son who's 16 right now, and I couldn't toe that line anymore because that I was a conduit. I was acting like a conduit, an open door for Scientology
right.
to my child. Whether it's watching me be silent and say that's okay, or allowing my parents to have access to him or other church members. Um, that's what ultimately made me, when he was around 8 years old, and that's when you are recruited heavily to join and believe. And
Mm,
um,
that ripe age of
I
8.
just, without being loud, yeah, ripe age of 8. So I know that if I'm loud, I mean, there's no question where I stand my ground. I'm obviously not an
Right.
OSA spy, like a Scientology spy anymore. No, I mean, not that I was, but people worry about that. You can't form
I'm sure.
relationships outside of the church unless you are straight up like, this is what I stand for. Um,
Mhm.
and I felt that way in the church too. Like I'm passionate about honesty and art and creation and expression, and those things are really important to me. Um, and I just wanted to be on the right side of history, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to go to a question really quick, since you mentioned it about like the monetary donations.
Mhm.
Is there, I've all the shows that I've watched, it seems like they expect a heavy tithe. Do they call it tithe? Like, what is it called? How do they base the money amount you're supposed to give? Sorry.
No, yeah. Okay, so there's two different things. There's purchasing services at a church. So when you hear about people taking top levels or getting one-on-one auditing counseling, that's a set price. I want to say they sell them in chunks of like 12 hours for some of that stuff. It's like around, I think, $8,000 per 12 hours. Um, so certain process would take 4 of those, you know. So very high, yeah. And then when you start talking about getting up to the highest levels, they can be 30, $50,000. Plus, some of those levels actually require that you report back every 6 months to Florida. So people are spending travel money and
Vacation.
accommodation, yeah, to go back there. So there's that aspect.
Oh,
Then there's the International Association of Scientologists, where you are expected to donate for their causes. So they'll be like, we have I don't know, like a tornado came through, let's all
mhm.
donate. Or these they're mostly PR stories. Nobody ever sees Scientology actually doing anything, but they're telling their members and recruiting huge amounts of money, saying they're doing good things. They're not telling their members that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers, hundreds of thousands of dollars on private investigators, hundreds of thousands of dollars on propaganda. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So, I
all
mean,
sounds familiar. Mhm.
yeah, regular Scientologists, like my parents, would be in credit card debt, could mortgage their home a second time to pay for these services.
Wow.
A big part of us cutting ties was my parents in particular. My stepdad had a heart thing. He had to get surgery, and my mom had a knee injury, and they were at the same time. And so at that point, they had to look in their lives and find out who was anti-Scientology, that was bringing negative anti-Scientology energy to their life,
That caused it.
caused his heart problem and her knee, and that was me. That's heartbreaking. He literally said,
Oh,
Liz,
hon, I'm so
I'm gonna
sorry.
die. So he said, I'm gonna die if I can't get this Scientology. Don't fuck this up for me, please. And at that point, I knew that the best thing I could do for them was to give them give them proof to OSA that, cut ties and say, I give you this. Like, take this letter over to your church and let them know that we don't have a relationship anymore. And then I never heard from either one of them again.
And how long has that been?
6-ish years.
I'm really sorry to hear that. That's very disheartening. I see it. All I can say is I see it so often, and I don't think many people have a clue because they just see these happy people on like these celebrities like Tom Cruise or whatever, and they just think like, oh, they're good people, they're doing good things, but behind closed doors, nefarious things like this are happening, causing a daughter to try to save her father. You're doing it because and cutting off yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I'm really sorry about that. I hope that you're doing okay, like getting through that.
Yeah, I think so. It comes and goes. I do try to allow myself to continue when I do feel that grief, to honor it, and it comes around. So.
Oh yeah, I don't talk to my parents like I used to. Like I'm not shunned or anything like that, but I don't think they have much to talk to me about because usually it's like surrounding religion. So you take that out, there's really not much there. And unfortunately, they kind of see you as like a stumbling block, as something that gets in the way of their, like in your father's case, getting better, my parents' case, everlasting life, whatever it might be. But that's what high control religions do to people in order to keep you to keep you afraid.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much their main goal, in my opinion. I would love if we could shift into Cassie, if you wouldn't mind. I'd like to talk to you about your religious upbringing. I know you said maybe it wasn't to our what happened in our lives. Thank goodness. I say thank goodness to that. But still, I'm not really even sure what a charismatic evangelical, and if our audience knows would you mind kind of giving us like what life is like living with that kind of religion?
Yeah, so I actually grew up, my mom's side of the family is Catholic and my dad's side of the family is Methodist. So I grew up kind of in and out of churches, my parents trying to find their faith and what they believe in. And we ended up not going to church for a while, in my like teen years. So I didn't grow up with a really strong belief in anything. But I met my now husband when I was 16 years old. And he is a pastor's son. And he grew up very religious and more on the charismatic evangelical side of religion. And when I was like 18, 19 years old, you know, like I've always been into spirituality and wanted to explore my faith and really wanted to know who God was. So when we moved to a new city together, his sister recommended a church for us. And I was always open to any kind of belief systems, but I had a pretty solid Christian upbringing, and my family was also conservative politically, like really conservative. And I'm realizing how even if you're not super Christian, if you're very politically conservative, there's like this admiration for Christianity. Like even if you don't really know, if you're not strongly Christian, there was something about like my family that like being the fact that my husband grew up very Christian and was a pastor's kid was like, he was amazing. They loved and adored him and they thought it was the coolest thing. So when we found this church together, it was recommended by his sister, and I had never heard of charismatic evangelical Christianity either.
Okay.
I just thought it was a non-denominational church, and I actually thought it was a pretty progressive non-denominational church, because there were a lot of things about religion that I thought was really like restricting and judgmental, and I didn't want to be a part of any of that.
Right.
And I found out about this prophetic ministry, and my husband and I signed up for this prophetic ministry internship. And you basically learn how to hear from God directly for yourself and other people. So that's why I say it's like being a Christian psychic. So you basically channel messages from God, but they're only from God. So what they told us was that psychics are channeling messages from who knows what, but something bad.
Of course.
You know,
Okay. Of
like,
course.
who knows what
Those
people are
guys.
saying.
Yeah. Those guys.
Yeah,
No. Us.
terrible.
Oh
Us,
God.
we got the direct line.
Yeah. Got that party line with God.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Sure
as
you
long
do.
as you do it in Jesus's name, you're good.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
good to
Okay.
go. And I thought it was cool. Like, I thought it was wild that like I was learning basically how to be a psychic. I didn't care what it was called. But I kind of got really indoctrinated into some of the more harmful Christian beliefs that are actually similar to Scientology. Might have lost Liz.
We might have lost Liz.
Hopefully she'll
That's all
pop
right.
back
Well,
in.
yeah, hopefully I'll bring her back in if she comes back. I'll bring
Yeah.
her back in. Oh wow.
So I got indoctrinated into some more harmful beliefs. I got indoctrinated into purity culture. That was probably the most harmful thing for me. But I actually also started noticing some things about the way that it's real convenient to have the direct line.
Yeah.
I started noticing some things that I thought were like unethical, like that I was just like, why would we do things this way? Why would we believe this way? For example, part of learning how to be prophetic was to go give random prophetic words to strangers. And for some reason, all of these places like to do this at Walmart. Like Walmart is just apparently really needs God. Like
Who knew going to Walmart you'd have a godly experience?
Yep.
Yeah, blow my mind. Okay.
Yes. So Bethel Church is actually a more famous church that does this. They produce a lot of worship music, kind of like Hillsong. So some people have talked about this from a Bethel experience, and Bethel called them treasure hunts. We just were doing it to flex our prophetic muscle and like learn how to hear from God. And they would take us out to Walmart or out to downtown, and we would have to ask God who we were supposed to talk to. The religious people of Walmart. Well, we were looking for the most unreligious people like in society.
Oh, okay.
So the church thought that Walmart there's probably all kinds of like terrible. Yeah. You might, if you go to Walmart in certain towns in this country, you might get unwanted.
You might get prophesied
attention.
to.
Yes, because that's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to hear from God who we were supposed to talk to. We were supposed to get a message for them, and we were supposed to go up to random strangers and tell them something about themselves and say, God wants you to know, blah, blah, blah. And I will say we were taught that it was for people's encouragement and comfort. Like we weren't supposed to go like tell them bad things. Like we weren't supposed to go tell them, hey, God told me that your life might end early. So
Okay, yeah,
you should
no
probably,
negative, no
yes,
negative
it wasn't
kind of.
supposed to be
Okay.
negative. But a lot of times people don't understand like what's negative and what's not and what experiences someone might have. And people would prophesy probably like really inappropriate things. Like imagine like someone coming up to you and maybe someone like something tragic just happened in your life and someone comes up to you and they're like, I believe God speaks to us and God wants me to tell you that whatever hard thing you're going through right now, it's going to be okay. And like, you can lean on him. And if you're struggling, like blah, blah, blah. And people would cry. Like we would have these experiences with people where they would cry or they would thank us or they would be freaked out and leave. And I was like, that's could be really harmful. Like, how do we not see how like you have no idea what that person is going through, and speaking something random to a stranger that you know nothing about could very potentially trigger trauma, especially if they're going through something traumatic right now. And we don't know what support system they have or if they have one at all. And we were not trained to give them support afterwards. It wasn't at all about like helping them through anything,
like building a community or
it was just supposed to get them to believe in God because it was a psychic word.
Just a little magic. Boink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are stories of people that have gone to Bethel for like because they were going through a hard time, they wanted comforting words. Cold reading the Walmart shoppers, exactly. They were sick and they just needed like help and comfort, and people would go up, were trained to seek people out in the audience, would go prophesy something huge over them and then just leave. And these people would just be left in this church that they traveled really far to like be in and hope that they would be healed or something in the process, and would just be like kind of abandoned and realize they actually didn't have a support system and it wasn't helpful. And it was a whole thing. So that's just one example of the very unethical things. The other problematic, similar to other cults, was the faith healing. So like we also believed that God wanted to heal people and that you could pray to physically heal people's bodies. And if you had enough faith, your physical body would be healed. And,
oh God, ableism. Oh, help me, Jesus. Help.
Yeah, really bad. No, and I haven't talked about this quite so much, but someone in mine and my husband's life was very sick and believed that they could faith heal this illness and did not get early and available treatment early enough. And there were very bad consequences. So it's very dangerous. Like faith healing can be extremely dangerous and extremely harmful. When people go for faith healing and aren't healed, and then you tell them, sorry, like not me, I had the faith to lay the hands on you. That was all you didn't have enough faith to be healed. So now they're dealing with physical illnesses and now complete mental, emotional crises because now they're being told things are their fault. It's kind of like in Scientology, like what you were saying, where they believe it's someone else in their life that believes against Scientology. Except now you're causing it. And no matter how you try, you aren't fixing it, but there must be something in there. There must be something in there that you're not doing right. Because it's not fixed. So yeah, from there, I went through kind of an MLM-ish pipeline because MLMs are kind of all the rage in the charismatic evangelical space. And there is a whole industry of business coaching online that I think was started from people that were in MLMs that left MLMs because they weren't making enough money there. And they took much of the same models and belief systems and built these business coaching empires off of it. And I got into like manifestation and like very woo-woo spiritual stuff. because it was like the same as what I believed in Christianity. And as I kind of deconstructed that a little bit, it was very easy for me to just, like hop over
in that
into,
pipeline. Whoop.
Yeah, right into that stuff. And in there, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on business coaches that were supposed to help me like build a business coaching practice where I charged people thousands and tens of thousands and hopefully eventually hundreds of thousands of dollars for me to business coach them. And I was taking these courses and working one-on-one with people, and they weren't really teaching me anything.
No, like it was. Yeah. Oh boy. Just a lot of word salad bullshit.
It was almost like the faith healing. It was more of the, well, you're not believing that you can do this. What are your mental and emotional blocks that are not allowing you to build this business? And really, I had really low self-esteem and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know what I was building. I thought they were going to teach me that. Like, I thought they were going to teach me like how to coach people, and like there was some, this is the thing about cults, is like there were some good things in it, right? Like I did actually learn some helpful things, some good aspects of marketing. And then I also started seeing really unethical practices, and I would ask questions and be like, hey, isn't this a little like sketchy that you would have people do this or convince them to buy things this way? And people would always dodge my questions or just put it back on you. You don't do the work. Like you're not working it. You're not working your business hard enough, or you're not believing enough. And of course it's not unethical because I do it and I'm making all this money and my client over here is making all this money. So if you're not, like, that's your fault. That's your
personal problem. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I didn't know what to make of all the unethical things that I was seeing in both, because that's all that I had been taught. And I didn't know what else there was. So when my husband started deconstructing his faith and started asking questions, which the thing that unraveled him was he started asking questions about hell. Like, is hell real or not real? And started kind of like looking into that. And that was all he and I needed to find a whole deconstruction community of people that were also asking these questions.
Right?
Yes. And like realize that we weren't crazy for trying to call out unethical practices. And then, watching Scientology in the aftermath. And then the NXIVM documentary, The Vow. Have you seen
I've seen parts of that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because NXIVM was originally an MLM, and then it was like a success coaching program.
Oh, I forgot that. I forgot that it was initially an MLM. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was seeing
pipeline.
like how much Scientology charges for courses, because like the business coaches that I was looking up to work with them one-on-one for a year can be upwards of $100,000. And the programs, the programs that I was signing up for were tens of thousands of dollars.
Dang.
The horrible coach I had, luckily I didn't pay quite as much because she wasn't quite as good of a business coach. But I have paid in the tens of thousands of dollars for one-on-one business coaching help that did not help me make any money at all. So seeing these people pay all this money to just be indoctrinated into a belief system, I was like,
right, that is unethical.
Yes. And I was like, that's what's happening here. That's why I'm seeing like these unethical practices. And then it turned out those unethical things that I was seeing were the same unethical things happening in Scientology and in NXIVM. Yep. And I think that somehow I came across Dr. Stephen Hassan's work with his bite model and the influence continuum. And I was like, it is all the same.
Yep. It really is. They use the same format. It's mind-blowing how
and there were
take
like
a page right out the book.
Yeah, there were some scandals happening online at the time with Rachel Hollis. Are either of you familiar with Rachel Hollis?
The name sounds so familiar, but I'm not sure.
That's the girl wash your face.
Yeah, she was the girl wash your face girl. And I started like, she came from a charismatic Christian. Her dad was a Pentecostal preacher.
Oh.
So so I was like, and she was doing business coaching and live events and all these things. And then it came out that her and her husband were getting divorced, and they had charged people tens of thousands of dollars for marriage coaching, which they were not qualified to be giving at all.
Right.
So I get really
Oh my
passionate about the
goodness.
business coaching side of things because that's where I was like the most like harmed, I feel like. The Christian
Yeah.
side of things, I got a little bit of it, but my husband was more like raised and indoctrinated and harmed in that. And I feel like I have so many friends still in both that don't see any of these things as harmful. And so I get really passionate because I'm like, how do you not see that? Like people are hurting.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And
people
it's
are
difficult
losing
to,
their actual lives. They're losing their money, their
Mhm.
retirements, their health
Families.
that they could easily get treated. Like, oh, it's so sad and it gets me so fired up. And that's
Mhm.
why I
And
started
they get
talking
so
about
deep.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes, and I mean, ultimately, we're here talking about the things that we've seen to let people know, and that doesn't like, that's fine if you have a great relationship with God and in your church, everything is honky dory, but
Mhm.
you should never negate like what other people have gone through and their experiences, and that to me is what's frustrating. I
Yes.
I'm not trying to take your religion away. I understand why
Mhm.
you need your religion, but
Mhm.
you shouldn't have any issue with me speaking out about the things that I personally went through because of what I was taught. Like
Yep.
Right.
it's exactly like you said, like it's by the book. You can pick it out and follow the bite model and see they do A, B, C, and D. It's like all the same stuff on repeat through this pipeline, through all these
Mhm.
different religions.
Yeah. I try to tell people now, like I never, especially when I was deconstructing, I would say this a lot because everyone I knew was still like very deeply Christian. And I was like, I don't want to take that away from anybody. Like I don't want to take your personal relationship with
Mhm.
something that you feel has benefited you so much in your life. I would never want to do that to anybody because that in itself can be harmful.
Mhm.
But I just really want to encourage people to look at how their beliefs and their actions are affecting other people and how the things that they support and give money to and believe in are potentially lying to them
Mhm.
and really, really causing harm to
Mhm.
individuals and entire groups of people.
Mhm.
And
You're
I
enabling,
don't,
basically.
yeah, like I just, that's where I draw a line is I'm like, when you ignore the suffering of others, when you claim, whether it was the religion or the business coaching, the biggest thing that drew me to both of these things was that they claimed to help people. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to help people that were hurting and suffering. And so when people from either of these groups don't understand what I'm doing now, I'm like, what do you mean? I've literally that's always been what I've always told all
Right.
of you is that like I want to help people. So
Right.
like how can you ignore such deep and profound suffering
Mhm.
Yeah.
because you like Jesus? Like seriously?
And the thing is just because you love Jesus, it doesn't mean you can't fight back. Isn't that
Mhm.
what Jesus did? What if you are a Christian and you believe in Jesus, is that not what Jesus was doing? He was fighting a back supposedly against the
Yeah.
Pharisees, right? The people
Yeah.
who were like running shit, all the different
Mhm.
Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, whatnot.
Yeah.
So if he did it, would it not makes sense that you, if you hey, that's right. You know what? I love Jesus. I'm standing up for Jesus, but you're not
Mhm.
following Jesus. I think that's the more Jesus thing to do than anything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I fully agree.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um,
But
was there anything else you wanted to add to that? I'm sorry that about the MLM part of it, the how it's deceitful, and because I really do feel like people don't understand how intricately intertwined the MLM business is. I swear to God, I come across it like almost every day. I guess it's
yeah.
because I'm into religious content, but I swear a girl comes across my page and it's just the way that she's talking. I have a feeling I'm going to be sold something. And then I look at the
Mhm.
profile and they're all about loving God or something. And I'm like, wow, what
Yeah.
is what is going on? It's like this new wave, new age
Yep.
spirituality.
there's like, there's so much and it's so complicated. I almost like don't know where to start or how to summarize it quickly because
No, I
there's
know.
so many different pockets of it. There are like a lot of people say that there's a like Mormon MLM connection. There's like an evangelical MLM connection. And then there's like a
Guarantee.
woo-woo spiritual new age MLM coaching connection as well. But I think it all is because they're all like, I want to say alternative belief systems. And I think they see it as a way to live this alternative lifestyle because of all that you're promised, right? Like they want to be successful in a different way than society says you're meant to be successful. That's what I see the common thread as, but they don't realize that they're using emotions and like people's hurt and pain and suffering to make them believe that this thing will help them out of that. Like that's what the promise I think in a lot of this is like I've heard people say that the biggest reason people get into cults is because they are hurt and suffering and are searching for something, which we all are at different points in our life.
Right.
Or you want to help people and you want to change the world, or you want to be successful and you want a lot of money. And I had all of those things at different points in my life. And at like some ways I'm proud of it and some ways I'm not. And those things can be good things. They really can. But when you prey on people's like deep needs and emotions, you can get them to do things that they maybe normally wouldn't do. That they say things that they maybe normally wouldn't say. And then on top of that, a lot of these people are just blatantly lying about what's possible. So like that's the thing with
it's empty
MLMs
promises.
There are false promises. There really are only so many people that can make the levels of money that they promise that people make. And you have to get in early. Like that is truly the only way. So at some point, no matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how hard you work your business, you're not going to get to that level. And it's the same thing in business coaching. Like a lot of the business coaching is the most wild to me because it's the most money I've seen people take from others, but they lie and say they make 7 figures or 8 figures when they don't. And they get people in the industry to lie and say that they pay them. Like I know of a coach who gets her other downline coaches to post on their social media that they pay her 6 figures, and they don't. They literally
that's so deceitful. That's
so
trash. That's trash.
So there are actual lies. There is actual fraud happening. And then you prey on people's like deep needs and emotions to get them to give you all
God
the money
dynamic.
they have.
It just
and
adds
you'll
like
give
another
anything.
level.
Like my husband and I, like it feels silly now sometimes talking about it, but we literally paid everything we had whenever we paid for these like coaches. It was all we had.
Right.
And we were willing to do it because of the promise of like, well, I'm going to make so much more than this as long as I work hard. If I work hard and I'm helping people and, you know, I'm working my business and I'm manifesting and I'm believing in all these things, I never thought that I wouldn't make that level of money. But yeah, most people don't. And then sometimes when you do, like another promise is that you won't have to work that much, like the promise of like the 4-hour work week, or, you know, you only have to work 20 hours a week was a big thing when I was in it. And I have friends that did end up making multiple 6 figures in the coaching industry, but they were working themselves like into the ground. They were working way more than they were working in their 9-to-5, and they were tired and burnt out. And it was
if it's not even your full time, like if it's not your main focus job, that's a lot of it's energy, like that kind of work, because you have to have that kind of energy, positive vibe. It does kind of like grind you down. And I want to tie this into, because I want to talk about like the celebrity stuff with Scientology, but that kind of is an important tie-in when you have people who are kind of celebrity or just on TikTok famous or Instagram famous or what have you, and you've got these people pretending as though they're living these certain types of lives, whether it be in Scientology or with the MLM, whatever it is, they're kind of like the forefront of, to these different religious organizations. So I would love to talk a bit about David Miscavige. I don't know if y'all know David Miscavige, but he's the dude who's running the show right now after L. Ron took an L. Sorry, Ron.
Yeah.
So David was missing. David Miscavige.
He was missing.
He was missing. Is he returned? Has he found himself?
Yeah, Liz, you might know more. I'm not sure, but he's basically in hiding. Like he's basically hiding in Scientology buildings in Clearwater. I think he was seen on New Year's Eve. His wife was missing first. Yeah, Liz, do you want to take on the Shelley of it all?
Talk about poor Shelley. Where's Shelley?
Poor Shelley. Okay, I'm going to have an unpopular opinion. I'm going to explore an unpopular opinion here.
Explore away.
Okay. I would like to know where Shelley is. Shelley is the leader of Scientology's wife who apparently got in his bad graces and was sent away. This is essentially the story that is come to be accepted, and that she is behind locked gates and a compound, whether a prisoner of her own belief or an actual physical prisoner is debatable. But nobody knows where she is. Her friend, Leah Remini, put out a missing persons report for her, 8 years ago? And the LAPD came back and said, we saw her, she's fine. You don't need to know anything else, basically to the world at large. So nobody, and here's the thing, they said, we talked to her with her attorney. Now, I'm going to go off for a second here. Jamestown, Jim Jones. We're going to go back to this horrible cult.
Right.
A senator, I forget his name, was getting a bunch of his constituents were like, my family's got taken to this cult. So he went down to their base, Jamestown, and he conducted interviews with people. And they went out and they had other people present. At no point did they ever say they were under duress. People in cults under duress will not say they need help if they have authority figures near them. And I believe
was similar to it as well.
Okay, yes. And law enforcement should know better. They should know better.
They do.
And they do. They do know better. Exactly. But this is the thing where it comes to so she's okay. How do we really know she's okay? Now, here's the even more unpopular opinion. Shelley Miscavige was there. She started in Scientology as a small child as well. She grew up with L. Ron Hubbard. She has seen some shit. And she was David Miscavige's right-hand person. So a great way to control people is to know their crimes and hold them against them. Call it blackmail, call it whatever. I really do believe that Shelley Miscavige knows and has been participant in illegal activity, and that will probably, unless she can be granted immunity and she's called to subpoena, I do not see any universe where she is gonna stop that relationship. L. Ron Hubbard's own wife outlived him by 16 years. She never gave an interview. She never came out in public. She lived with 2 or 3 handlers in Hollywood in a little house for the entirety of the rest of her life.
Oh, wow.
She was sent to prison, and her husband, L. Ron Hubbard, turned his back on her, and she never, David Miscavige sort of expelled her as well. I'm just saying that there's a long history of towing this line, and while I'd love to say that it's just David Miscavige's pressure, I do think that when you're in a cult, you do things that are unethical sometimes, and then that shame and blame holds you in that space even longer. And so That's a lot of what I see happening there. Like, yes, I'd like to find Shirley Miscavige, and then I'd like to get her into the FBI's world and get her
Right.
some sort of immunity, because there's another ex-Scientologist who had a flip-flop situation, and I think it's similar, that Scientology will use your crimes against you. They ask you, demand that you confess everything, and then they will use it against you. So if it's bad
Yeah.
enough, you will be controlled. You have to be
Mhm.
willing to say, like for me, every single thought, behavior I did until I was 25, I confessed. Every intimate action, every intimate mistake, everything I was not proud of, I confessed. And so I know every time I go on TikTok that could be a billboard outside in my little town next time I drive my kids to
Right.
school.
Right. They
You
could
have to
find
be
you oppressive and decide to come after you,
exactly. And so I think the stakes get
or
higher and
suppressive,
higher.
whatever.
Yes. The stakes get higher and higher. So for Shelley Miscavige, who is David's missing wife, I'm frustrated with that whole situation on a
Mhm.
number of levels.
Well, they
Yeah.
have, I think we've all spoken, well, I haven't necessarily, but I've seen you all speak about how the police department is basically given money from Scientology.
Oops.
So, and they even had one of their kiosks set up at some point in one of their,
Yep.
was it a bureau or a police
I think
barracks
it
or
was,
something? I don't know, but
yeah, just the office.
somewhere,
I
some
hear
government type establishment.
Yeah, they also like pay them as security, off-duty
Yes.
security
Yeah.
at different Scientology events where they're not
Hmm.
really there to be security. They're there to like rub elbows with celebrities who are
Right.
celebrity Scientologists and eat good food and get paid way more than their police salary and like build relationships with Scientologists, and so they can have strong contacts with the police department and be
Well,
able to
yes.
have.
And this is written into the plan of
Mhm.
Scientology. Outside of the religious aspects, the organizational aspects of Scientology, they have checklists of who in the public sectors you want to not only disseminate to, but essentially turn, right?
Mhm.
So you are supposed to go pinpoint mayors, politicians, police officers. It's actively to recruit them, maybe not necessarily to become Scientologists, but to safe point Scientology, to be associated with it, to normalize
Hmm.
and give it credence. I think it's really important to remember that before David Miscavige, L. Ron Hubbard's wife, and I think it was 6 other people, went to prison for infiltrating the United States government. It was the biggest infiltration of the United States government to this day. The IRS, the FDA, the local offices, Washington, D.C., I want to say the Federal Reserve. And this was back
Jesus.
in, they were creeping in with their keys and copying things at night and then bringing them, dropping them off to Scientology. They were, so this is my whole point, and to say this is that these patterns are repeating. They're just not caught yet. And so safe
Mhm.
pointing the
Right.
LAPD or different, that's part of their game. It's very consciously done on Scientology's part, very consciously. So that was who we can see, but the under the iceberg of the people who are bought off is bigger than what we know for sure.
And that whole, I think that was it Operation Snow White? Do I have that
Snow
right?
White. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I had read about it just briefly, and I don't understand how they were not held accountable. Somebody's in their pocket. They're in somebody's pocket that they could behave in that manner. What happened?
Well, several people went to prison. I mean,
Okay,
they
so they did.
definitely, yes, but L. Ron Hubbard did not go to prison. L. Ron Hubbard was never served. He avoided being
So
served in questioning, yes,
mm.
by hiding in a trailer in the desert.
Oh,
And
fuck.
David Miscavige was one of those select handful of people who knew where he was, who was working with him, communicating with him. Scientologists at large didn't even know where he was. He was essentially in hiding. Now, David Miscavige, I think, is doing the same thing, but he has a lot more power. He's hiding in his fortress, right? He's no server is going to get through to him because he's behind so many protection, people beyond people, beyond people. So you can't say he's hiding, but I believe that he's in Florida and he is just, I hope he's under siege.
They can't infiltrate his protection.
Yeah, well, and that's why it's such a big deal that David Miscavige is avoiding being served right now in like a civil lawsuit, because once he's served, he has to go to deposition and they can ask him questions, and he like does not want that to happen, because that's when things can get dicey for him and for Scientology as a whole, which is why it's, however this plays out, it's going to be really interesting, because I really don't think that he's going to be able to avoid being served, because that's what the hearing next week in Tampa is to consider him served, is for the plaintiffs in the civil suit, basically saying, we have tried every way possible to serve this man. He knows and is avoiding being served.
Right.
So they're asking the court to say, even though he hasn't physically received the papers, which is required, there is a legal loophole, not really a loophole, but there is a law that says that, like, if you do everything you can to a certain extent, they're considered served, whether they've received the papers or not. So that's what this hearing on January 20th is going to be, to decide if he's been served, or his lawyers are showing up to say that he shouldn't be served at all. So this shouldn't even be a discussion. And the plaintiffs, if they don't consider him served, I don't know if they're going to make them keep trying. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. What will, and the allegations, sorry, I don't know if everybody in the audience knows the allegations, but isn't it sex trafficking? Or not sex trafficking, but human trafficking.
Yeah. Child trafficking and human trafficking.
Okay, child. Would you say, I'm sorry?
Yeah, there's three parts. There's human trafficking, forced labor, and peonage. So peonage is debt slavery. I had to look it up. I didn't know this before the lawsuit.
Peon.
It's basically when you have to keep working to pay off your debt, but you have to keep accruing debt to keep working. So it's like an endless, it's debt slavery, essentially.
Because they kind of got to take care of you while you're taking care of them. So now you owe them for them taking care of you while you take care of them.
Exactly.
Oh.
I think of Blood Diamond, the movie.
Oh,
about
so sad.
Working in the mines. They have to rent the pick and shovel every day for such amount of money, and then they're always, falling behind.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then I don't know if just one or all. This started when they were 10. Like, they signed the billion-year contract when they were 10 years old.
Right. And how can a child agree to a contract for the rest of their lives? I don't understand how they're legally allowed to consent to that.
Yeah.
They really shouldn't be. And by the time they were 10, those children, when they were children, the plaintiffs were raised in the cadet org, which means that their parents were already working for the church. And so they were raised in dormitories without their parents. So signing their contract was really the only other place to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They didn't have a choice. There was literally no options for them. And you're a child.
Right. It's under duress. You're being coerced. You don't have like you said, you don't have a way out as a child. I mean, even if you were older, if that's just been your way of life, you probably still feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't have a choice.
Right.
Oh my goodness. That's so
and one of those
heartbreaking.
plaintiffs is, honestly, I don't know a couple of them, but one of them, Valeska Paris, I don't know her personally well or anything, but she has tried to take this to court for the past, I want to say, like 15 years, and she was shut down in different courts, and she went on to get her justice degree. I forget what it's called. Like, she is the one who in my opinion, that I've seen has pushed, like, she's like, fine, if the lawyers aren't going to do it, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to figure out what laws were broken so that I can get this case tried. So,
and I think she had to find a judge that would take the case too, right? Like weren't judges turning to like just saying we're not going to take it? And so after she had more knowledge in the area, she finally found someone where she was like, you have to.
Right.
Like, you have
How
to.
frustrating that you
Yeah.
have to do so much work just to get an ounce of justice.
Mhm.
Oh my
Which-
And
goodness.
Scientology never apologizes.
No.
I don't think they've ever issued a single apology for any of this. Like, they've changed some of their rules. Like, you can't have kids and be in the Sea Org anymore. And that was supposedly where a lot of these forced abortions were coming from and all this stuff. And they changed the rules, but they never apologized, never admitted. And so that they're just perpetuating that trauma. And yet, let's write them a check.
Well, money covers everything, I guess, when it comes to these religions. Money kind of solves a lot of different problems. Well, I mean, not necessarily for you, but for the religion itself.
Right.
For the religion, it solves a lot of
Right.
problems.
Mhm.
Just a reminder, y'all, because we're at like the 110 mark. I want to make sure if there's any questions in the audience that you get your questions in before we close off the show. Not to say that we're closing off, but I don't want you all to feel like you have to stay here because I did say it was an hour. But I do want to just kind of circle back to the whole celebrity thing and how that's portrayed like in social media with, I just told you all back on stage that Serena Williams recently got baptized.
Mhm.
And I was curious, like, how do you feel the celebrity affects the people's view, just the general public's view of the religion? Do you think that it does help just to normalize it and people don't really see behind, like, these people are getting treated special? Like, there's probably special treatment for these people who are in the public eye versus the regular Joe Schmo.
Well, there are actually separate organizations for celebrities in Scientology. So when I worked with
Oh,
I was the public executive secretary of
excuse me.
Celebrity Center, Portland. So that big, beautiful church in Hollywood, it's called Celebrity Center because when you work there, you take a bunch of classes about how important celebrities are and about how celebrities disseminate for you. And it's really more important and more effective to get one celebrity than 4 average Joes. So it's an active.
I'm
And
sorry.
I know it's actively pushed. I mean, and that's why if you go in to look at the Celebrity Center, it will be fancier, it will be nicer, it will be
We need a
opulent.
celebrity center in the JWs.
I know, right? I
Maybe
know.
that's why they're
They're
not
slacking.
doing so well. They're slacking a little bit.
It's like normalized in Scientology. Celebrities have their own, and so then you have someone like Danny Masterson. He's a generational Scientology who grew up going to this church, having special treatment, having special entrances, having special rooms where other people couldn't be. And I'm sure there were, like, Tom Cruise was above his level even. So there's, I'm sure, layers to it. But that combined with trying to believe that you, in working to have police in your pocket, you put yourself above everything, right? Like, so celebrities have this power that
Ego.
even in Scientology is valuable, and they can leverage it, and they do leverage it, which is why some celebrities left Scientology and they don't get harassed because they're a big enough celebrity that they'll say, like, just leave them be. You know, who was the one? Laura Prepon? She said, "Oh, I haven't been in Scientology for 5 years." She was a big enough celebrity that when she walked away, she did it quiet, and they were like, "Okay, go." Leah Remini was last, so
right.
They
Love
don't
you, Leah.
like it when you use this. Your celebrity against them. They'll hit you
Right.
hard.
Yeah. So Yeah. So on my end of things, the charismatic evangelical Christians also use celebrities. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys are familiar.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just familiar with what's her face that's been in the news, Candace Cameron, her brother Junk Cameron, I
Yeah.
mean Kurt Cameron.
They are. Are you familiar with Hillsong? Did either of you watch the Hillsong
Oh,
documentary?
I just yes, and I hate them. I'm sorry. I do. I'm not sorry. I hate them. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So Hillsong is a good example because Carl Lentz developed a great relationship with Justin Bieber. Justin and Haley Bieber are
Oh
still
God,
in that
yes.
world. Selena Gomez. And actually, so I did a series on the Kardashians and their ties to this, as well as Lou Taylor. Did you guys pay attention to Free Britney, the Free Britney
Um,
movement?
yes, yeah, I've been following that.
So Lou Taylor was the attorney that held the conservatorship
Right.
and is now kind of part of lawsuits that Britney's trying to fight for stuff from Lou Taylor. She's a big LA attorney law firm. Her husband is a charismatic evangelical pastor.
Okay.
There are actual payments from Britney's conservatorship estate to different churches and ministries that are connected to Hillsong that are in hot water. But there
Good.
are these celebrity pastors in LA. There's 4 different churches, and all of these celebrities, the Kardashians, literally Kim and Kanye, Justin and Haley Bieber, Selena Gomez, Chris Pratt, and Catherine Schwarzenegger, and a couple other big ones, all go to these different pockets of these evangelical churches that are all the same. They all believe the same things. They're all anti-LGBTQ. They're all trying to infiltrate political parties, politics in LA, in the United States. It's all part of Christian nationalism. There's
Yep.
so much to it, and it's so in
So deep.
depth. But I think that they use celebrities, one, for their money, two, for their access, because they're trying to gain political access, because these people believe that we are a Christian nation and that we should be governed by Jesus, literally. So they think it's really important to affect all different facets of society. So yeah, it's their money, it's their access. And then I think they also use it to show people that they're trying, not just recruiting into the cult, but people that are in it, that look how successful these people are. I feel like in Scientology, it's the same. It's
Yep.
they use the tech and thus they book the jobs and they're
Platform.
successful and they make
Right.
the money and
Yep.
can go further up the bridge. I think it's the same in Christianity. There's a lot of prosperity gospel where it's they believe in God, they have the energy around it, they pray about it, and they believe in what God has blessed them with, and God has literally ordained them to be at this level in society. And look at what you can have and how successful you can be and how close to God you can be and how many lives you can change if you believe what we believe and practice what we practice. So the celebrity of it all is some of the worst and most harmful things that these organizations do, for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say something about what you just said, but my husband asked me what I wanted for dinner, and I was like, "Oh, I'm hungry." Oh shoot, I'm so sorry. I really did have something I was waiting for you so I
No,
could
you're good.
say it,
I'm
and
sure it'll come back around.
yeah. Anyway, so I don't know which religion gets planets. I think that might be Mormon, or no, or
Yeah,
do
that's
you?
Mormon.
Yeah,
Okay,
you don't
but
get planets in Scientology, but you have to go to planets in between lives to get your implant to forget your life so you can come back to Earth.
that's how it
Yeah.
works. So you get an implant, so you don't have a clear connection to the past
Um,
lives, or
yeah, you get ideas, religion implanted that hangs you up in life.
oh my
Yeah, it's kind of
goodness.
a weird one. But apparently it's
It
on
is
Mars. So
it's so
planet.
convoluted. It is I don't understand how an author becomes the leader of a spiritual movement. And they don't believe in Jesus, right? They're not like that kind of, they're not like Christian, right?
No
Right.
way.
Okay. So it's so wild to me. That is
That's
just so,
beneath them, right?
I
Scientology.
think
oh, is
it.
it?
What?
What'd you say?
I was going
of
to
my
say Scientology, kind of like the Christianity. I know they say you can be a Christian and a Scientologist, which you can't, but it's kind of like beneath them, right? They're like, those people think they know something, but they're ridiculous. We have the answers.
It's an implant. Jesus is taught, when you're in the higher levels, you are taught that Jesus is basically
Stop.
Imagine that we're like computer programs. It's like a downloaded program that's designed to tie us up and confuse us and trick us while we're here, so that we don't find the truth, which is
Interesting.
Scientology.
Isn't it interesting to think that a higher power needs to trick people? And even just like when Jesus, like speaking in parables, for instance, hello, why? Like, is the
Right.
message to get people to comprehend, or is it not? Because I'm a bit confused, but they all have that aspect of
Right.
like this secret esoteric, oh, you'll know when you know. And if you don't know, well, I don't know what your problem is.
Yeah.
That can really mess with somebody like me, because I never felt a connection to God. And oh yeah, God, you feel God's Holy Spirit. You feel God's Holy Spirit when you pray. And I literally felt so empty and so nothing that I was just like, damn, like God won't even open the freaking door to communication with me. He hates me that bad. He won't even like look a second way. It's just really horrible for children to have to grow up with these kinds of thoughts instead of giving them better way to cope with, if religion's meant to help us cope with life, some critical thinking skills is probably, can't that be a religion? Can we not make some kind of critical thought religion? Like ask questions, remember the golden rule, ask questions.
That's supposed to
Number
be science.
2, right, ask for evidence. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I honestly thought that Scientology, and I think my friend, Dr. Time Waster, when we had looked into Scientology, thought that it was based off of some kind of scientific beliefs. And then when we looked into it, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this is not
Science
what I thought.
fiction.
A science fiction author made a religion.
But if you're in Scientology, you do treat it as a science. Like,
oh, I'm sure you think you're like,
because
every
L. Ron Hubbard said that all of these discoveries were based on research that work 100% of the time. If you apply Scientology correctly, it will work 100% of the time. So if it doesn't work, you're fucked up.
You done fucked up, Aaron. Aaron. You messed it up. Yeah, but it always comes back to you. And I think that's that. I don't know what that circular pattern is, but it comes back to you. So you try to do better. You try to get back to the good graces. And then maybe you get the good graces and you're getting the love. And then you're human, you're fallible, you make a mistake. And then you're back on that freaking roller coaster ride of just, I just always felt like I could never get my shit together. And I was just I was honestly like, nothing I did was that. I mean, I did some dumb stuff, but you know what I mean? Nothing I did was that serious where I couldn't be forgiven, but you're treated as if you're some kind of trash. Yeah.
And so for my mom and my brother in that pattern that you're talking about, at some point she was like, this is me, my son's behavior is because of me. So I have to sacrifice more. And then you break that bond. And I think in Scientology, I firmly believe that that's done on purpose. And so, and I think it's done in a timely way around, 8 to 13 years old, if you can. So that those moments are so can, how do I explain it? They're so powerful because in those moments, I say it's desperation. That's kind of what I say makes people join a cult. At some point, you're willing to just say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to believe in this. And it's hopefully
give it a shot.
Yeah. But it doesn't always end up well. Like in my family's case, and take Lisa Marie Presley, for example.
Yeah. May
She
she
was a
rest in
generational
peace.
Scientologist. Her
Mhm.
children were
I
third
forgot
and
about that.
fourth generational Scientologists,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
they're
okay.
not doing well. I mean, her son tragically passed, had, I don't know if it was ruled unaliving or a
Mm.
drug thing. But these are supposed to be families with the tech, with
Right.
the
Mhm.
With it
solution.
all.
They're
And
supposed to have
these
the
are
answers.
yes,
Yes.
and these families are, mine, for example, or hers, are in ruins, are in
Mhm.
Yep.
tatters,
Tatters all. Yep.
tatters. And
Yeah.
so I cannot believe that she passed. I seriously,
Yeah.
and immediately I heard the voice of Scientology. I heard it. I heard it. I heard it say, well, that's what you get. She was
Mhm.
PTS. She was involved in
Yeah.
that Danny Masterson case. She had done something wrong, like cutting ties with her. This is just my own mental crap. Nobody actually
Yeah.
said this.
No, but what you're saying is resonating. I guarantee that's how they are redirecting and refocusing the
Yes. And if you
Yep.
leave, here's another tip. If you leave Scientology, like, yeah, you're gonna mess your kids up, and they're
right.
gonna go down, and then you are going to be wrapped up in such stressful, horrible things that you are gonna succumb and die. And
Mhm.
a lot of people believe that. That is gonna keep a lot of people in it.
I mean, I
A
Yeah.
lot
guess
of
that's
people
ultimately what your parents were
exactly.
desperately trying to search for what is keeping them in this, I don't know, cycle or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's immediately who I thought of course. I immediately thought of like my stepdad being like, see, that would have been me if, if
Right.
we still had a relationship or whatever.
yeah,
So I'm glad that I'm not getting that from the outside. I can hear those things in
me
my mind
too.
and stop and be like, hey, I'm noticing that I'm having some of these thoughts right now. What does that really
Yeah.
mean? And I appreciate
Mhm.
that. But it does really piss me off, sort of. I feel like it's almost a win, like the Danny Masterson, how he got a mistrial. Like he didn't get
Yeah.
off. But I felt like it was a win for him and a win for
Yeah.
Scientology. And so many,
In the
so
media.
many young women in Scientology. I don't know about men because I don't have their experience, but I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a predatory environment. As soon as
Mhm.
a girl is of puberty age, she's already considered an adult, and some of these old timers just keep getting older, and it's gross. It's a gross environment where they have access to touching and being in closed rooms with young people. Um,
Is that not
I'm
though
going
kind
off
of
the
what like Hollywood is like? No, but I think that it ties in a lot to what we've seen in the media with what is happening in
Oh yeah,
Hollywood just in
right.
general,
And those
Mhm.
the
girls
abuse of
know,
children.
yes, and they know that
Yep.
most likely they'll get off. Most likely their abuser will get off. Like, look
Yeah.
what happened.
Yep. Yeah.
Even with such press and the amount of people I saw in your comment sections with the mistrial, whatever, or whatever, whatever had happened. I can't remember exactly.
Mhm.
But there's some people like, yeah, good. I didn't think he blah 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 blah. But they
Yeah.
didn't care to look at any of your other videos, to look at like
Nope.
what would had been happening to these people from the Scientology end and how they had been manipulating them and twisting things
Yeah.
and whatnot.
It is really discouraging, like Liz, what you were saying that you feel like it's a win. It does feel like that. And it does feel discouraging because so many people don't understand what's going on. I think that's like the most frustrating part for me is I feel like it's really important for people to understand because that's the only way I think these abuses lessen and stop
Mhm.
entirely is if people can like comprehend what's going on. And I think there's so much drama that surrounds a lot of these topics and there's so many people's like personal opinions and personal life experiences that they don't understand about just those types of crimes anyway. And
Right.
so for my videos to be like just completely inundated with so many people that just did not get what was going on and had no
Right.
desire
They just had
to.
a surface level media understanding.
Yes. And it's like there's information very accessible to you on my profile, but you don't have to watch me. You
They
can
don't
find
look.
it many other places. They don't look. And it feels like people don't care. And that's hard because like on the one hand, I'm like, well, how do I expect people to care and understand? And on the other hand, that's how these organizations, people, religions, like that's
They know
how it
they know it.
perpetuates.
Yep.
Right.
Because people don't understand what's happening.
Right.
But, all we can do is keep talking about it.
Right.
And sometimes that's hard when so many people start checking your hair color because you have an opinion.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, mine's kind of tucked back right now, but sometimes I get that too. With hair like yours, Satan must be like after you.
That's their
Okay. Satan
go-to.
colored my hair purple. You are so right.
That's their go-to, their favorite thing. Well, you don't understand anything because you have green hair.
Right. Like, look at you. What could you ever know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually lived these experiences. That's how I know. I'm
Yeah.
telling you. And I'm not telling you that maybe you haven't had some good experiences.
Right.
But goodness gracious, me oh my, if I was going to a new doctor, I would be doing some like looking into,
Yeah.
like I at least want to see like
Right.
on Google, like does he got a good Google review? Does
Mhm.
she actually care about her patients? I would want to know
Mhm.
this kind of information, and
Mhm.
it would definitely suit them if they would take the time to just look, because if they are religious and they go to church, they honestly have an opportunity to make change if they find if like it hits them so hard that they have to go, that's not it. That's not the truth. Like if it hurts you that hard, you could actually make some real changes
Mhm.
if you would accept the reality of what is happening, and you can still keep your God. Like your God is not going to be mad at you
Absolutely.
for holding
Right.
people accountable. Like, is that not
Mhm.
what God did? Hold people. I mean, I think he was a
Right.
jackass,
Yeah.
but that is what is supposed to happen. So if you are that godly, it would behoove you to actually want to take a
Mhm.
look at what people say.
Yep.
Anyhow,
Yeah. Yeah. I could go on forever.
I
me
know.
too. I really appreciate you all being here. It is at the hour and 30-minute mark, so I probably should not take up too much more of your time. But I want to make sure that before we go, that you wrap up with any information you want to give anybody. Also, if you have any projects, things of that nature you're working on, please make sure you plug, and also your socials, so that way people can give you a follow and a little like. See, seriously, y'all, please make sure you go check out their content. If you're on TikTok, I know not everybody is on TikTok. I don't think either of you were on YouTube, are you?
I'm starting a YouTube channel. So I
Okay.
have, if you search No Culty Vibes, I have a couple old podcast episodes that are
Okay.
Christian culty related. So there is some content
Relevant.
there that is relevant. Yeah. And I'm going to start doing more because I have a lot to say. So I need some long form ways to say it that I can kind of get into the groove of.
Mhm.
So yeah, No Culty Vibes on YouTube.
It is difficult sometimes when you have like a minute or 3 minute, and I know you can upload 10-minute videos now, but I like to record on TikTok,
Me
and they don't
too.
let you record 10-minute videos because I like
Right.
to do my editing and whatnot all on there. So
Mhm.
I I just feel like for the long format, and honestly, I think that YouTube, if you're looking to monetize, YouTube is going to pay you
Better. Yeah.
so
Right.
much better than TikTok. Like I've not made
Mhm.
1 penny off of
Right.
TikTok. I mean, I
Right.
haven't made anything off of YouTube either, but there's potential for the
Right.
Yeah.
advertisements. But with
Right.
TikTok, there's nothing. So I think it's
Yeah.
really good because you get to disseminate a lot of information fast. Like
Mhm.
if you can get your video down pat, you can
Mhm.
really fit a
Mhm.
lot in 1 minute, and that is digestible for people to share and spread the
Right.
message, which I
Yeah.
just chef's kiss. It's like Twitter, but video Twitter, right? Everybody can
Mhm.
see it, everybody can message, and the fact that we can like video reply. Am I like advertising for TikTok? Like what
Yeah.
the fuck?
You
The
might
Oh,
share
fuck?
I love TikTok.
The
talking
fuck?
TikTok.
I am not getting paid for this. Am I in some kind of cult? What is happening? Okay, I'm gonna shut up. Cassie, would you mind? Would you mind please giving us plugging all your stuff and anything that you have coming up, and if you have any closing words or whatnot?
Yeah, so you can find me TikTok at the Cassie Marie. Have to say
Okay.
it the correct way. And on Instagram, it's the same, Cassie Marie, and No Culty Vibes on YouTube. I am working on kind of a big project delving more into Christianity and youth missions and Christian nationalism. So I'm going to start interviewing people around that culty subject a little bit more. I do plan to dive more into informing people about the business coaching and that as well. And I am working on kind of a merch, but also just like a little culty art shop. And
Ooh,
I have
culty
some,
art.
yes, I'm an artist as well. That's been a way that has really helped me heal and cope, kind of coming out of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
did art before all of this as well. So it's a little bit like me going back to my kind of core self, I feel
It's
like.
cathartic.
So
It's
yeah,
awesome.
there's going to be some no culty vibes. I want to do like stickers and prints and have
I love
some
it.
like fun culty sayings that I'm working on. So
Oh, there's probably a lot of those.
yes.
So awesome. Liz, please, would you mind any closing words, any and where we can find you, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, if you want to find out about me, my deepest, darkest secrets, you really just have to Google Liz Gale Scientology. Um, I don't have like a lot of social media stuff. I just do the TikTok. I have my own little website because I wrote a book and it's not for sale now. I'm looking to see if I can get it published. So my passion that I hope to share is to share cults through fiction, through stories. I think it's great that we all tell our personal experience, but I think there's a little bit of like a train wreck that people tune into. And I want to get people on the
Yeah,
train.
you're right.
I want to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
people so they can, through fiction in a safe way, be like, wow, I really do understand that progression. And so
Mhm.
that will, and what I think will educate and bring awareness and compassion um, to people who are experiencing cults or coercion or high control
Yeah.
groups. And I think that'd be my biggest message to leave everybody with is that please, when you do find somebody who you are sure is in a cult and you're sure that they're brainwashed and you are sure that you can just shake them out of it, just take a step back and just come with compassion, because the harder that you try to tell someone they're in a cult, the more they will not believe you.
Yeah.
And for families that are coming together or people, I just want to remind people to keep their compassion about them. And just because someone's in a cult doesn't mean they'll always be there. So, try to be there for them through compassion.
I think that's a good idea. I think sometimes people get so frustrated because of what they've been through, and they might um, tend to either lash out or try to push, or again to do the same exact thing the religion do, coerce. And unfortunately, people have to wake up in their own time. And I don't think that means you can't talk about it, because I
Right.
think all subjects should be talked about,
Right.
but you have to, it's hard to navigate. And having a book, I think that would be brilliant to kind of bring people on for the ride instead of just watching the train wreck. I love how you worded that. I think that could make a real difference in people's lives. I think that it would be great to have, like, I don't know if there is a children's book, but a children's book on cults, they probably could take that one right out the library. But
I have wanted to make a program, an actual like curriculum for early childhood education, because coercion is also marketing strategies,
Mhm.
yes.
music, Hollywood, television shows. I mean, there's so much to be aware of. And the earlier that you can just say, oh, hey, that's an ad. Like, oh, hey, my
Right.
cracker
Yeah.
doesn't have to look like a Disney character. It can just be a cracker. And noticing
Yeah.
like it's a Disney cracker, so you'll buy it. Just really
Mhm.
simple. That's a whole nother thing, but I think that'd be very valuable to society as well. Maybe we should collab on that.
I
I
agree.
I mean, I'm open. I'm open to discuss. No, I really do feel like there's a lot of focus that could be done for children's sake on education into the perils that
Right.
can befall you if you get involved in a high control religion. Just to know the signs, what to look out for. And again, I can't control anybody. I won't tell anybody what to do, but I would not get involved in any kind of religion without first looking up the organization, what they're about. What
Right.
do they actually do for the community? Do
Right.
they do things for the community? Because like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they consider community work fixing kingdom halls, building kingdom halls,
Right.
going door to door
Mhm.
and preaching the good news.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you should be weary of
Yep.
when you consider yourself being in a good religion. Are you in a really good
Right.
religion? Ask
And that
yourself
applies to
questions.
MLMs too, and to
Yep.
high
Yeah,
pressure sales environments. Like they're
business. I mean,
so yes. Yes. And once you see it in one, you see it in all.
Yep.
yes. See, getting the train, and that's why I feel like they don't want us trained because once you see it, you can't
Yeah.
unsee it.
Yeah. And it's also more likely like that you'll cult hop. Like if you don't know what the signs are
Yes.
and you don't know what the red flags are, like I feel like that's a little bit what
Yes.
happened to me is like I went from one harmful situation to a worse harmful
Right.
situation because I didn't
Yep.
know why the first one was harmful, you
Yeah.
know. So like
You,
if there's no education or if you don't have access to that education, then you're just going to go from thing to thing to thing in the
Right.
same
yep.
Right.
situation.
All we
Yep.
need to do is adapt the bite model to an
Mhm.
early age type.
I think that's a really good idea. I wonder if Hassan has anything in the works. If not, hit us up. Steve, hello.
Yeah.
Hello. We have lived experiences. I'm sure that we have a lot to offer. Let's get on that.
Yeah.
You all, this was epic. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm sorry I kept you for so long, but I didn't
Oh,
realize we were just getting into it.
yeah.
I didn't even have a clue. Thank you to everybody in the audience for watching. Y'all rock for supporting this channel. I'm gonna close out then. This was our first show in the books for Pious Placebo, starting it back up
Oh,
on
great.
apostate. Yeah, I was
Yay.
doing it for a long time last year, and then we just kind of stopped. And I was like, you know what? I really want to pick it back up because I do like talking to people. And I also like to build community. So that way,
Yeah.
the more people we can get on the same page and get them on the ride versus watching the ride, I think we'll be more successful when it comes to things like activism because I definitely want to get more involved. I just got to figure out how. And I need to
Mhm.
bring people into my realm who can help get who can help get me there. But
Yeah, well,
anyway,
thank you for doing
yeah.
this and thank you for having us. Like
Yes,
I agree and I
it
really
was a
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you all. All right, everybody, keep your eyes on the prize, and we will see you next Friday. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.